Hello and welcome to the Extreme Middle Podcast, episode 2, called The Couples Toolbox: Essential Skills for a Strong Relationship. My name is Adam Nasser, and I am joined again by the absolutely wonderful and amazing couple joining me every week, Charles Cohen and Isabella Sophia. Welcome, guys. How are we doing?
Yay! Super excited.
How's it going, Adam?
Yeah, we have a juicy topic today. Couples essential skills. Let's deep dive into that. What do you think?
So we're going to be unpacking and uncovering our favorite tools to use within a relationship, what keeps relationships juicy, what keeps them lasting.
Exactly. And also what keeps them very healthy, right? Because you see so many people complaining about toxic relationships, and especially when you take a look at sitcoms, and every single conflict in any kind of relationship in almost every movie could be resolved by one conversation. Like literally. Like people not talking to each other. It seems like it's the hardest thing in the world, but I think it's so simple. Like, for example, my wife and I have been together for today is the 26th, right? So 6 years, 10 months, and 10 days, almost to the hour, right? So, and since the first moment we met online on OkCupid, right? We never had a single fight to this day. Not even an argument, not even any kind of scuffle or whatever, not even the smallest thing. And I think the reason for that, it's about communication. What skills do you bring into the relationship? How are you dealing with specific situations? Basically, effective communication helped me have a relationship where we didn't have a single argument since the very first day of our relationship. And by the way, we have a lot of things that couples could argue about. Like, for example, I have a very different view of the whole transgender issue and the LGBTQ issue than my wife has. I personally think there are two genders, which is men and women. And I personally think that transgender people that suffer from transgender body dysmorphia, they need help. I agree, but I don't think it should be a celebrated thing that people get a presidential medal for wearing a dress for you. That is not appropriate. And she thinks differently. She thinks that trans women are women. And even though this usually could create a huge fight in a relationship, right? We don't fight about it. Okay, agree to disagree. It's fine. And we will deep dive into how stuff like that can work. So good communication furthers trust, right? For you, Isabella, since you have been married before, now you're together with Charles, tell me a little bit more about the importance of trust in your marriage and how it is now with Charles. What's different? What's the same? How did you do that?
Trust. Oh, trust to me feels like you can finally let your guard down. And I think so much so trust is earned. It's not something that's just a given. When I'm with Charles, he just demonstrates everything in a way that to me shows he's trustworthy. You do what you say you're going to do. Even to the smallest thing, like being on time. Like I will be ready by 5 o'clock, and that means 5 o'clock. It doesn't mean 5:30. It doesn't mean 6 o'clock. It doesn't mean sometimes 10 minutes after, sometimes 30 minutes after. So even in that seemingly little commitment, it shows that if you're a trustworthy person.
Would you say that trust is earned before you start the relationship or during the relationship?
I definitely think it's earned across the whole process of the relationship.
Tell me more.
Yeah, and how does that relate to past relationships? What is the contrast between now and your past?
You know, when somebody does something that is inconsistent with what he says he's going to do, then it creates a question mark within the trust container. And I think the trust container doesn't work on a spectrum. To me, it works as black and white, 0 or 1. It's binary. It's either you are a trustworthy person or you aren't. There's not a gradient between I can trust you a little bit, I can trust you 50%, or I can trust you 100%. It's either I trust you or I don't. And being in a relationship where you feel like you can't trust the other partner is really, it keeps you on eggshells all the time. You're just constantly wondering, he's saying this, but does he really mean it? He's saying it, is it actually true? Is it actually happening? And then it's tiring, it's exhausting, because I don't want to feel like I have to question everything that you say. That's just not a good place to be.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Now, it's always beautiful to see when you talk about Charles, how he gives you this trust and whatever. Like, he seems to be demonstrating everything you just talked about just by the way he conducts himself. So what I'm getting from this, it's not just I say certain things or I do these huge monumental gestures of mega impressing the huge Hollywood ways of, hey, I'm here on the plane with like a 50 billion roses just to gain your trust. It's more like consistency in small things that weaves through everything, right?
Yes, absolutely. Another way Charles shows that I can trust him is by considering me and sharing context of things, information that sometimes it's not like it's even necessary information, but it's information that he thinks I should know.
So consideration, basically.
Yeah. For example, we bought a house together last August. He told me, hey, I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this, but this is the situation. The realtor told me that the previous owner of the house, she asked when she saw your application, is that the Charles that I dated? And in my mind, my first answer was, so did she give us a discount?
It depends how they use to date, right?
Exactly. So were you good on this date? So is she going to give us the house with a discount, or she's going to be like, no? So in that example, it feels good to me that he's bringing it up before either like later on I find out or before that I have to ask. It just feels that he's considering all parts of how I would feel about a situation.
Yeah.
And as you speak about it, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds almost like that has not been the case in your previous relationships.
No.
Can you expand?
Can I expand?
No, I cannot.
I can expand.
Oh, please do so.
In previous relationships, I definitely didn't feel that information was presented to me that's edging on the side of just want you to know. It was more on the side of didn't think that you needed to know this.
I see. So it's basically the exact opposite, kind of. It's like you live on a need to know basis and I decide what is need to know. So.
Yeah, there was almost an expectation that these are things in my life. It's part of my privacy. I didn't think you need to know. If you ask, I will tell you. And if you didn't ask, I just didn't think that you needed to know.
So comparing that to now, how did that make you feel? I'm asking because I think that part of what is easy about this is because we consider each other the same way. And I don't think that we're all wired differently. And so some people are going to be others focused and they may just naturally already put themselves in the other person's shoes. Like, what might they think about this situation? If that was me, what would I want? And I think that you and I think similarly, but not everybody does that. And I don't know that there's any one right way necessarily. It's just, how do you relate with the person that you're with? Can you speak to this, Adam? Do you feel that you and Lisa have a similar way of considering, or do you feel like you have different ways that you two interact?
Oh yeah, it's definitely the exactly same way.
Yeah.
We literally have exactly the same way of considering each other. When you said before, I didn't think you needed to know. My previous girlfriend, Vicky, the one that was one of the most traumatic relationships I had in my life, she even told me that if you cheat on a person, you only tell them if you want to break up. And for Lisa, it's like, for example, just yesterday, perfect example of this. Right now, in the job that I'm working, I'm the only copywriter left. We let all the others go, and I'm taking over the whole copy for an 8-figure company. And I'm writing everything myself from now on. And usually I have my off day on Saturdays, right? And certain workflow things didn't perfectly work out. And in theory, I would have had to work on Saturday anyway. And I was cool with it, but I sensed inside me that something's off about it. And without me asking her, she was like, hey, I can write a copy for you, don't worry. Because she used to write for them as well, and she's now more in a coordinator position, but she offered it by herself, she wrote it by herself, and just took it off me because she said, you need your off day, and I want you to feel recovered.
Wow.
And this is the same thing other way around. For example, I know that when she tells me, hey, my eyes hurt, I know a migraine is coming. I know exactly she needs French fries in the house. She needs salty popcorn. She needs her coffee. And even though it takes like half an hour drive, I go to Starbucks and fetch her one cup of coffee from there because it's the special coffee that she likes, and drive by a McDonald's and give her what she needs. And I know this is going to happen, and I know what she needs, and I automatically do it. So it's like lots of acts of service that we give each other there.
I can see how that would be something that would develop over time with the relationship. But what I'm hearing from you is that you had almost an understanding of each other very early on, or maybe even right away. Would you say that that's true?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. For example, in the first few days of our relationship, she already started bringing me to work and fetching me from work. Back then, I was still working for a telecommunications company in Linz, and she was fetching me there, or like, this was so beautiful. It's a beautiful story for this. On our 1 month anniversary, I was in Salzburg and she was in Linz, right? And she had to work in the tea salon where she was working at until midnight. It was a very long shift. And originally, we wanted to celebrate our first month together. But if she has to work until midnight and I am stuck in Salzburg for like 2 days, that's not going to happen. But I was very, very focused on making sure that this is a great memory for her. And so I hustled like an absolute madman, because back then my job was like quality control of people, right? And like listening to the calls and coaching them. So I did the work of the following 2 days in one day, completely put it together to one thing. We were able to finish 2 days early, drove back, like went back with the train and got her from work at exactly midnight for our 1 month anniversary.
Wow.
And so we could celebrate it exactly at midnight. Next day, actually, she brought me heart-shaped cake because she knew I like cake and she likes that. I put a lot of value in thoughtful gestures. And she did exactly that. And another thing, for example, when we were very fresh together, like maybe a few days or so, we wanted to have a date on a Saturday, but she had to go to university there. It was like an extraordinary thing. And we wanted to have breakfast together, but this university thing came last minute. And so she had to cancel our breakfast date. So I asked her when she's going, and based on her answer, calculated in which public transportation she will be at which time, bought breakfast like croissants and coffee and orange juice, and knew what she liked, she told me, and surprised her in the public transportation with food that she likes for our breakfast date.
Wow.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And for example, for my 30th birthday, I place huge importance on the impact that I do in other people's lives and the relationships that I forge, because I'm very selective of what people that I connect with. But the more important it is that I have value in other people's lives, right? I don't want to be a waste of time for others and vice versa. And for my 30th birthday, she gave me the most considerate gift that I have ever gotten in my life. Without my knowledge, she completely did this. She completely blindsided me. I had no idea she was doing this. She recorded small little 1-minute videos with the people that were closest in my life, people that impacted me, that I impacted, people that I really had a powerful effect on, and created a 30-minute, because I was getting 30, right? A 30-minute video with the people who love me and cherish me and that I impacted positively, each of them telling me specifically how I helped them or why they cherish me, and put it into a 30-minute video, invited me to a spa weekend and showed me that video there. And she made sure that the spa weekend is a spa where they have a chocolate fountain where I can eat chocolate fountain for breakfast, because I always wanted to do that.
Oh my God.
And the cool thing is the video she learned to cut, because when I was going off for 3 weeks to Las Vegas for an education, I gave her daily little quests so she doesn't feel lonely until I'm back. And one of those was learning how to cut videos. So she showed me, hey, you taught me something. I learned from you. And now I'm using this to give you a gift.
Wow.
See, this is what I mean with this. And we always have the same wavelength of thinking.
It's incredible. And it sounds like you guys are complete black belts just in consideration. It's so wonderful that you attracted each other. I'm curious though, if say somebody trust for whatever reason is something that they're currently wanting to work on, and we're saying that consideration is a big part of trust and just something that we feel is important to have in the relationship toolbox. How would somebody go from, I pretty much just think about myself to how do I take that next step to start working on this, start considering my partner more?
That's a very good question. I would say that falls into the realm of compromise. But compromise, I think, has a different meaning to other people than it has to us. Usually, a compromise is both people accept a worse deal. That's what most people think, right? What compromise is. But I think a compromise is more where you say, hey, how can we both get the best for us out of this? That's what a compromise should be. I admit I have been extremely selfish before. And because I simply didn't know what consideration meant. Might be the autism, might be the way of my upbringing, maybe that I absorbed it from my dad back then. But basically, I thought that girlfriend is a person that loves you and wants to be with you at all times, just does what you need her to do. I thought that love means I'm nice to you and I help you when you need me and doesn't require anything in return.
Mm.
Because most of my girlfriends before were just like so in love with me and so addicted in a way that they were just grateful that I exist next to them. And the first time where this wasn't the case was with Vicky because she was a raging narcissist. So that was a completely different thing. And then I realized one day I actually broke her. I literally broke her because we basically had a really hardcore fight about our values and stuff. And I was railing on her, really berating her on all the negative things she's been doing and like how she has devaluing me and stuff. Because one of my autism powers is like copy pasting patterns. I was basically copying her narcissistic patterns of manipulation and threw it right back to her. It hit the weak spot of her emotions, one argument after the other, until she literally broke down and begged me on her knees to stop. And that was when I realized, wait a minute, that is not how I want my partner to feel. That's not who I want to be. I want to be considerate. And I think that I go from selfish to this. Sooner or later, you will have an experience that somebody that you really, really love feels hurt by you, and you didn't even consider that it could hurt them like that. And ideally, this doesn't happen. So if you want to prevent it, don't wait until your emotions tell you to be nice.
Mm.
Be nice and considerate because you choose to be.
Yeah.
Because then you don't need to wait until you feel like it. And you will be considerate even if you don't feel good, even if something happened that pisses you off. Because this way you won't let it out on your partner. The worst thing that can happen is like, hey man, I really would like to talk to you right now, but I feel really, really bad. And I know that when I say something now, it might come over differently than I want you to understand it. So give me a half an hour to decompress and get clarity, and then we talk. Or like, hey, I feel really, really bad. Are you open to having a conversation about this? I remember my therapist said this so beautifully. She says, never find a permanent solution for a temporary problem.
Hmm.
And sometimes that might happen. Let's say you have a really bad issue in your mind. We can go over this later in the main discussion where we talk about the specific skill sets. One of the I recommend is trauma checking. When something happens in your head and all your trauma get triggered and you suddenly live in that trauma, you might say things that do not matter to you 5 minutes later, but completely emotionally destroy your partner for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's so important to have kind of like a harmony. So basically, no matter what happens, you know you are good. Even if shit hits the fan, things go wrong, even if you make mistakes or whatever happens, you know that those things will not automatically put your relationship in jeopardy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would like to hear your take on this, Charles. What's your take on this building harmony? Because you exude harmony. Like whenever I hear you talk and see how you talk to each other, you look like a beacon of harmony and being able to like, I don't say compromise, but kind of compromise. You know what I mean, right? A good version of it. And how do you do that?
Well, I think that coming together, there were a number of things that naturally worked. One, similarities between the two of us, just in what we want to create in a relationship. Definitely, I think consideration was just a big natural thing. And then just general wanting to put effort in and say, like, here's what we've got as a baseline. Now, how do we expand it? How do we make it better? I think that that was probably the number one most important thing.
I have a quick question here.
Yeah.
You said that consideration comes to you naturally. So did you experience that in your previous relationships?
No, Um, I really thought that I was unique in how I thought about other people and how I considered other people. How and where I developed that, I'm sure came from any number of things with my upbringing and just maybe how I'm naturally wired. But I always had this sense of, I don't think anybody else thinks the way that I think. And maybe that's just okay. Maybe it's not fair for me to expect that I'm going to find that in somebody. That was my narrative for a very long time.
Wait, rewind.
Yeah.
So if you cared a lot about consideration, so you must have originally expected to get that consideration in return. And when you didn't, how did you feel?
It was really hurtful. And I think that there was a pattern of, within every relationship, there's this honeymoon period. For me, I don't know how it is for everybody, but for me, it was just easy to not see the red flags, or I would have maybe an initial knee-jerk negative thought to something and just like, oh no, it's fine, it'll be fine. So it wasn't until I got more mature and worked on this area of what are my deal breakers, what are my standards, that I could even see that early on or right at the beginning with somebody. So I entered a number of relationships where all the signs are there and I just wasn't seeing them. We can talk about the whole honeymoon period perhaps in another episode, but for me, there was always a timeline of, okay, so that initial boost of feel-good chemicals, having the relationship blinders on, that would always wear off at a certain point. And then I really would feel that gap of, I want consideration to be at this level, and it's just not. And so when I got really intentional about what I wanted to create, part of the reason why consideration was always the top 2 or a top 3 thing for me was because it was something that I failed to find at a high level in somebody else in the way that I wanted it.
That is a very good insight.
To your point earlier, Adam, about compromise, I see it as a relationship is not 2 people coming together, meeting in the middle. It's both people going all the way. So it's not, I come 50%, you come 50%. It's we both go 100% all the way. Then you have this overflowing of 2 people considering each other. Some couples might count scores, like I did this for you, therefore you need to do this for me. I bought you this gift, you need to buy me that gift. Like I took you out on this night, you need to take me out on that night, kind of counting scores in relationships.
No, transaction, I think, is just a recipe for failure. Even that is really interesting because it's just a different way, I think, than the traditional way of looking at compromise. Because if you're saying, I want to be with this person, I love this person so much that even if this thing, whatever this thing is, whether it's consideration, whether it's a love language, whatever it is, even if that's not a natural thing for me to give, I want to be able to give this to somebody. So it's something that I'm going to work on. This is just an area that we're going to keep communicating on so I can just keep getting better and better. I don't know what you would call that, but in terms of tools, that's a huge one. So in terms of having a transactional experience, Adam, is that something that you can relate to? Is that something that you've ever experienced?
I definitely did, because I thought I had to do it this way. When I was together with Vicky, I literally wrote down every mistake I ever made and tried to cancel it out with good deeds. So I had this kind of transactional relationship with myself in my mind, kind of. And with my wife right now, is we have a very balanced relationship. So for example, when I purchase dinner, she purchases lunch. Or if I purchase the main meal, she carries the desserts. But it's not like, I did this for you, now you have to do this for me. It's more like, hey, we want to both contribute. And because we both can, right? If she doesn't earn income, I carry most of the load and she does more of the housework. If we both earn, then I help out. We always make sure that this is a team effort no matter what we do. We had this since day one, by the way. When we had our very first date, I paid the first meal we had. It was like a vegan burger restaurant, which was really, really good.
Nice.
And then she paid for the ice cream at a Japanese restaurant later. And we always had it since then. We constantly alternate, and sometimes we forget whose turn it is. Then I just take it, and that's okay. And the difference between a transactional relationship here is, we show appreciation and we show that we do not take it for granted.
Yeah.
We both take care of it because we want to. And it's more of a sign of, hey, I cherish what you do for me, and I want to show you I cherish you as much. It's not like, hey, I did this for you, now you owe me one.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction, though, because that's what separates it from being transactional. For you two, it's teamwork and it's
Yes.
appreciation. So what do you think is the distinction? How would it veer into transactional? Is it the keeping score? Is it the expectation?
I think it is the sense of entitlement behind it.
Mm.
So as soon as you think I deserve that the other does it for me, that's where it becomes transactional. If you think of like, I want to do this for the other, even though they don't give back, I don't care because I just want to do it for them. And both people think the same way. And also the appreciation, because if you think it's a transactional thing, you will not say thank you because you deserve it, right? It's part of the transaction. You don't say thank you to somebody that you paid for. If you're polite, you will. But basically, you don't feel indebted to the waiter for bringing you the food. You don't feel indebted to the cook for making your meal because you pay for it. But if, for example, a friend of yours says, hey, you look hungry, let me cook you something, it's a different feeling. Mm-hmm. So there it's not, oh, shit, my friend cooked for me, now I have to cook something for them back. It's the difference. It's like, hey, thank you, I appreciate you for this. You know what? Let me treat you to a coffee. Yeah. The difference, I think, is like transaction versus reciprocity. And the key difference is the form of gratitude behind it.
I have a question here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's wonderful when a couple just know exactly what to do to please the other. Many books, they say, if you want something for yourself, you need to communicate that to your partner. Especially this happens in books teaching women how to communicate to men, saying men need clear instructions. If you want them to do something nice for you, you can't just say, hey, I want to feel more loved. You have to spell it out exactly what that means for them. Like, I want a bouquet of flowers, or I want you to take me out to this restaurant, or I want you to write me love notes. So how do you reconcile this part of, okay, is it the same if I want something and I tell you and you do it versus you just know what to do to make me happy?
Oh, that is such a great question. Oh my God. I love that you asked this. So I want to jump in with this one because I have been thinking about this thing for like literally 2 decades. So I literally started thinking about this like at age 12, 13, because it was so weird to me. Because on the one hand side, women say, I want to be surprised, but if I have to tell you, it's not the same. And I was always like, why not? Isn't it worth more than when you say to somebody what you want and tell them what you want and they do it to please you and to do this for you, rather than expecting them to be magical mind readers who automatically do it? Like, I'm not a fucking genie. I actually learned mentalism just for this cause, by the way, to learn how to mind read people and understand what's going on. But later I realized this. Yes, the surprise factor is important. It's an important emotional thing, but here's a middle solution what you can do. As a couple, you sit together and you write down things that you like to happen or things that always make you happy. For example, you can say, hey, this is a list of 15 things that you can make me really happy with. In this situation, I need this. Or in this specific situation, I would like this. The gifts that would make me overjoyed is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you give your partner a range of things they can pick from. You train your partner first, so that they know what it is and what helps. Like, for example, when I know, okay, Lisa gets a migraine, I go and fetch fries. Mm-hmm. So now she doesn't have to tell me, I need fries, please. I can go by myself and fetch them for her. Or, for example, I know, oh, wait a minute, she was a little groggy yesterday. Let me go buy them right now so they are here and she doesn't have to wait when it happens. Stuff like that, right? But at first I had to learn this. Yeah. And just for her, it is the same thing. What I like, what is important to me, and how certain things work. And I told her what I like. For me, it's like, no problem. I tell you what I want. And if you do it, I'm happy. The problem is if you tell somebody what you want multiple times and they don't do it, that is where the conflicts come up. That is where things feel like, by the way, there's a 6th love language. The 6th love language is feeling heard and seen. So it's pretty much almost like a combination of all the other love languages where you have the feeling that the other person understands you. Yeah. And that is a very powerful love language that most people don't take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So this list, if say a couple was consulting with you right now and you're saying, all right, day one, here is like absolutely what you need. how would they go about constructing this list?
So the most important thing is that this list will probably be a living document. It's okay to treat it as such. You will always encounter situations as a couple that you can't prepare for. Certain things will always happen. But there are a few things that you can think about. Let's say something really bad happens, like a family member dies, or I lose a friend, or I lose my job, or I win a job that I always wanted, or something really big and amazing happens in my life. There are certain situations that are of high emotional value, and to teach your partner upfront what would be the best, most affirming, most supporting, most loving response in that situation is a great way to start. For example, hey, when I'm really, really angry, this is the way I process this. So when I'm really, really angry, I'd like you to say this and that, or doing this and that. And then the next time you get angry, you don't have to tell them, they just do it. And then it still feels like they just kind of get you. That's something very powerful. So basically, in a nutshell, give them the most powerfully emotionally charged situations and how you want to be treated in those, and the most basic human emotions like anger, sadness, joy, disgust, fear, surprise, and how you want them to deal with it. And then you discuss those things. Why is that? How come? How can I show this best? And stuff like this. And that's, by the way, also an amazing conversation topic.
Yeah.
It's an amazing topic to talk about during the first few dates or during like a deep talk session to like bond. Stuff like that is perfect in a beautiful warm bathtub, some good essential oils, some sweet snacks next to each other, and you talk this out.
I love that. That's such a what a difference that would make for so many people to have a sense of this is what the other person needs, because we have a tendency to think that what I would need in the situation is what the other person needs, but that is rarely the case. So I think that's amazing, Adam.
And it sounds like in order to have this list, the foundation is we need to have a level of self-awareness.
Yes.
In knowing what we need in these situations. Perhaps a lot of couples expect the other person to be the savior for our solution, for our problems. And I think a lot of this is going deep inside yourself and being introspective.
I like what you said, Isabella, is that you have to be self-aware. That's actually a very important like skill to have in a relationship, self-management and trauma checking. Do you guys know what an app reaction is? Ever heard of that?
No.
So this is a expression in psychology, but mostly hypnotists learn this. It's like when you have a trauma deeply buried in you, and for whatever reason, something triggers that trauma, it comes up in exactly the same intensity and in exactly the same state as you experienced it back then when you had been in said trauma. And the difference between the bad experience and bad memory is that you cannot tell the difference between reality and memory anymore. It happens very rarely. I think a few years by now ago, I had an aberration that came out of nowhere. Lisa and I had a conversation, and I think I told her that I wanted something specific, or I don't know what it was. And she gave me the response that Vicky gave me back then when she dismissed me.
Oh.
And back then it was really, really bad. And the thing is, Lisa didn't even dismiss me. She just gave a normal response. And for some weird reason, I immediately felt exactly as back then when I had the really ugly arguments with Vicky. I went to bed without saying goodnight. I went to bed on my own. I just like closed myself off. And when she came to bed to cuddle, she was just trying different positions how she can lie best. In my mind, she was trying if she's allowed to touch me because I'm mad at her. And then when she was pulling away, I was like, yeah, she's probably given up on this and that. Like, she's pissed, like, whatever, right? And I was getting more and more angry. I couldn't sleep all night. And in the morning, it was even worse. It was so bad that I didn't want her to wake up because I didn't want to continue the fight that didn't even exist, right? Like, I didn't even know. It felt like we had a fight. And then, basically, I journaled. And I wrote down my thoughts and deconstructed them. I wrote down what I'm feeling, and I questioned those feelings in written form, which helped tremendously to get it out of my head. And I call this trauma checking. When you have a very unexpected reaction that is very negative, that is completely uncalled for, journal about it and check yourself on it. And I literally had a full-blown abreaction in written form. And then she woke up and I heard her wake up and my heart started pounding. I was completely getting nervous because I was like, oh my God, we're going to fight now and it's going to get angry and it's going to get messy. And she just came and said, hey, good morning, honey, and gave me a kiss. I'm like, what? Like, that woke me up. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Right? And this is so important to check. Do you have any maybe underlying trauma that could come out? And this is always why I still go to therapy twice a week. Because certain things might be deep down there that I don't even know they are. Yeah. And I want to make sure, because maybe next time I don't catch myself in time. What if she woke up and I would have started berating her for no reason, right?
Yeah.
So always check on this and never act on feelings alone. That is so important, because if feelings are your only driver for action, there will be days where you don't feel super lovey-dovey and then you treat your partner worse and they might think, what's wrong? What's off? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. So when you love a person, set yourself some standards of behavior that you act on no matter what. And those standards become very, very clear things that you act on no matter what happens. And let your partner know that you have set standards, because then they can keep you in check.
That's true.
So in conclusion, guys, what would you say are the top takeaways you have from today's episode for our listeners and our viewers to remember?
Well, I think in terms of the most crucial tools for a relationship, in order to have this really open and honest and effective communication, you've got to be able to have an understanding of the person, a willingness to work for the relationship, understanding that whatever you've got at the beginning, it's something to keep building on. It's not something to just coast on. So come into the relationship knowing that this is about investing. It's about giving first and holding yourself, the relationship, and your partner to the standards that you have.
That's amazing. Isabella, how about you?
How about you, Adam? You go first.
Nice thought. Cool. But yeah, I would say the main takeaways that I think that people should keep in mind are the techniques that we shared. How you deal with certain things and what you want your partner to do. The way that you have standards for yourself that you set, that you let your partner know, that you defend with your life, right? The decompressing by journaling for trauma that you might have, to check in with that and to let your partner know what is normal for you so they can see if you're off. Those things are incredibly helpful. And I highly recommend everyone, even if you're mentally healthy, go to therapy. Get a good therapist that literally helps you uncover things you didn't know about yourself yet, because your partner is not your therapist. It's not their job. And that was a hard conversation I had with Lisa, actually, because before those abreaction things, I talked with her about absolutely everything. And we could have great conversations, but I realized certain things I said hurt her. And I realized, wait a minute, things that don't matter for me 2 minutes later still hurt her. I don't want her to have permanent damage for something that doesn't matter to me 10 minutes later. And so I told her, hey, I need to talk to somebody now that is not you, somebody neutral, because I need to get my mind in order. So when I talk to you about something that I feel like, I can talk to you in a non-emotional way where I know exactly what to say, so I don't hurt you with something that I don't even mean. And she got it. And then I deconstructed with my therapist, and then I told her later what we talked about. This episode, by the way, is not sponsored by BetterHelp, but I still recommend it. BetterHelp, if you see this, I love you.
Sponsor us.
Yes, that's free ads. Cool. Yeah, Isabella, your turn.
All right. My biggest takeaway is give your partner a map to your heart. And this will likely be a product that we offer later on. Called Heart Map. It's understanding yourself, how you're wired. What does the maze of your heart look like? So give your partner a map to your heart so that they know under what circumstance, what to do, where to go. And you're empowering your partner to help you feel good in whatever situation. So Heart Map.
This is amazing. Heart Map. I like that. Oh, I like that so much. Like, put it in the comments if you actually want us to create that. That would be super useful. Like I can even see like a heat map, right? That looks like what is important, what is not important, things you can talk about, things that are not okay, like need some time to open up for this or stuff like that. Yeah. On this happy note, it was an amazing episode with you guys. Charles, Isabella, thank you so much for joining me again. It is fun every single time that we speak together. And friends that are listening and watching this and seeing this on the various different networks, make sure to follow, to click, to like, to share, to save, to do whatever you can with this thing. And next episode, we'll go even deeper. If you want something specific we should cover, put it in the comments and come back, because maybe you will hear exactly what you need without even knowing that you need it.